Okay, so take two. Here we are with the board, and because of the draft lottery and the way things turned out tonight, I'm going to move some teams around. Buffalo wins the draft lottery. Something goes right for them, so I bump them ahead of Calgary, Islanders, Edmonton, Vancouver. I bump them up to 22nd because the addition of Rasmus Dahlin in the draft will be a benefit to Buffalo, and they should be active because that adds a player who should be in their roster right away next year, and they should be able to make some moves. Montreal bumps up 2 spots, so I'm going to go ahead and or bump them. They bumped up 1 spot. I'm going to bump them ahead 2 spots here. Carolina gets the number 2 draft pick. I'm going to bump them ahead of Arizona and St. Louis. I'll leave them behind Florida because Florida finished with enough points to make the playoffs in the West. So for that reason, I'm going to leave things as they are. And there would be other movement in these teams if there were big moves made. The changing of coach in Calgary doesn't change things for me. Doesn't change things in Carolina. There's not a whole lot going on here that for me means okay, now I need to move this team or that team. Just the draft lottery for me is enough to make moves. So they're locked in that position or these positions until something else happens, and that could be until the draft. Number 12, Philly. They lost against Pittsburgh. They showed a lot of fight, and in the end, Pittsburgh just got in their heads, and they just didn't have the goaltending. Philly is now stuck going into another offseason wondering about their goaltending, which is bad if you're a Philadelphia Flyers fan because this has to be getting kind of repetitive and kind of sickening at the same time. Number 11, Colorado. The Avs are way ahead of where any of us thought they'd be at the start of the year. Yes, they lost in the first round, but they put up a pretty darn good fight. They lost to a pretty darn good team, President's Trophy winners. And I get the feeling we could see them again next year. Number 10, Columbus. So Columbus in the end, there were points during the season where I had them in the bottom row and they weren't very good. And in the end, they moved their way up and they look a lot better than what they did then. However, they're still out in the first round. Being out in the first round is an issue. And Columbus didn't fix that this year. So with Winnipeg winning a round and Columbus not winning a round this year, Columbus now has that dubious distinction of being the only team in the NHL that hasn't won a round. Number 9, Toronto. And that includes Vegas. Think about it. A first-year team did it. The Toronto Maple Leafs will sit at 9th. They're locked into 9th place. They did very well for themselves. I know Game 7 is something that will stick with Toronto fans, and they're going to be upset about it for a while. But I thought that Toronto did relatively well this year in the playoffs. They got to a Game 7 after last year. They got to a Game 6. Last year they were against a Capitals team that wasn't very good at closing things out. This year they were against a Boston team that had some issues as well. And yet I feel like Toronto has a lot going forward, and I know there's still going to be some very upset Toronto fans, but I still think they have a really good shot at doing something soon. Number 8, Capitals. So they're in the second round. They're against the Penguins, and Game 1 didn't lead me to believe that things have improved. In fact, it looks worse. Maybe not. Maybe Pittsburgh comes back and is different in their next game, which is tomorrow afternoon. Maybe the Capitals take advantage and win one at home. I don't know, but for right now, I have the Capitals in 8th. 7th, Nashville. They're going to be hosting the Jets again tomorrow night. They're down 1 game in the series. They will be using that fan base to try to electrify the team and bring about better results than what they had in Game 1. It's going to be tough. Really, honestly, it's going to be tough for Nashville to improve things. Because Winnipeg is just playing so well right now. And I don't think it reflects on Nashville as much as it reflects on Winnipeg. And Connor Hellebuck. What a hell of a goaltender. Number 6, Tampa. Kind of surprised by how Tampa played this afternoon and the fact that they did look vulnerable. Now, down the stretch going into the playoffs, a lot of Tampa fans said, Shannon, Tampa's not as good as you think. And they pointed to this series and said that they believed that Tampa wouldn't get past Boston. And I couldn't see it. But, today's game, it felt kind of like Tampa down the stretch, that they weren't necessarily getting the goaltending they should. And I know it's one game. People say it's only one game. Yeah, but they only have to win 3 more out of 6. Like, it's just that much easier to win. Number 5, San Jose. The San Jose Sharks won a game tonight, and they won it fair. I know there's a lot of really upset Vegas fans, and I got Vegas at 4 because I still think coming out of these 2 games that Vegas has more momentum than the Sharks. But you know what? San Jose won that game. I stand by that call, and if anybody thinks I'm biased against Vegas, they're not paying attention. I haven't been biased against Vegas all year. Last week I had Vegas at number 1 for Vegas reasons, and this week for San Jose reasons they're at number 4, but they're still ahead of San Jose. And when a call is made by the league office, it's made by the league office. And it's weird because, Vegas, and I said this the other day, I said Vegas hasn't really dealt with adversity as a hockey team yet. Here it is. This is where Vegas answers the call. They can go into San Jose. They can lay a beating on them like they did in Game 1. And we can see Vegas is clearly the superior team. Or we could see the Sharks assert their dominance in a home ice matchup, win Games 3 and 4, and then suddenly Vegas is dealing with massive issues. My guess is we see a split in San Jose. We see it go back to Vegas 2-2, and this could be one ugly, ugly series. I thought it was interesting that at the start of the series, Vegas and San Jose are talking to each other. They're very cordial. By the end of this game, there was none of that. There was a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, a lot of fighting, and perhaps letting a lot of stuff go. Number 3, I have Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh did fall behind against Washington, and it was like there's this psychological thing with the Capitals that took over during that game that I don't know what it is. I saw it in the first round with Philly, and now I'm seeing it again with Washington. Vegas turns it on, and the Caps have this body language of it's happening again, and they just stop. And here's to hoping that tomorrow, at home, noon hour my time, 3 o'clock Eastern, that the Capitals can reverse this. Number 2, I have Boston. The Bruins go in and they beat Tampa, and that was quite the game for them, which means that number 1 is Winnipeg, who went in and beat Nashville at home. And if Boston gets another win over Tampa, Winnipeg gets another win over Nashville, even though they're both road teams, they'd be up 2-0, going home. And both Boston and Winnipeg are excellent at their home rinks. This is going to be a tremendous second round. We've just touched the tip of the iceberg, and even Pittsburgh, Washington, I really want to see this series tighten up. And yet at the same time, I'm like, geez, but if Game 7's in Washington, what are the odds? And they're not in Washington's favor, and I want to believe. I really want to believe. So, that being said, that's this week's power rankings. The Winnipeg Jets are at number 1. They were there a couple of weeks ago. Vegas was there last week. This week it's Winnipeg for me. And anybody who's at 9 and below, they're locked in where they are. And as soon as next week, we may see another team or 2 locked into their positions. If we see sweeps or 5-game series, that could happen. I'm hoping that doesn't happen. I like more competitive 6- and 7-game series than just the bland 4- and 5-game series. But that's me. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.